Common Sense America with Eden Gordon Hill. Yeah.
And good morning, Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill. It's Friday. It's May the 26th, and it's just about 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I was so eager to hop on with you, my amazing audience. Thank you so much for your powerful support this week to Common Sense America. Your text messages, your private messages, your messages on our media page, Eden Gordon Media on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your comments this week. I was receiving quite a few comments, and some of the interviews this week really touched the hearts and minds of our precious America. And you guys know how much I love our God, our country, and our families. And that is what Common Sense America is all about. So I am so glad to have you here. You know, we have two very special guests joining us. At the top of this hour, we have Elizabeth Clamon. She's a book author. She's a naturopath. She's a speaker. She has a phenomenal career, and I'm excited to talk with her. And her book, I'm going to be showing up here in just a few seconds. It's a beautiful cover. And I am excited to meet her for the first time, just like you. And then in the second half, we will have another author who I will be introducing a little bit later. You know, it is Memorial Day, holiday weekend. I know many of you are already on 95 or in the airport or waiting to get to your next destination. But as a veteran spouse, like I always talk about, as one who loves this country, as one who had a grandfather who served, two grandfathers who served in World War II, a father-in-law who served in the Vietnam era, and a husband who served in Iraq. Thank you all for your service. I know Memorial Day has different meanings for each and every one of us. I know a lot of people do the barbecue. It's the beginning of summer. Hey, you get to wear white. I have my white jeans on today. But I don't want us to forget the meaning of Memorial Day. No, it's not Veterans Day either. There is a distinction between the two, and I just want to highlight that. We had two phenomenal Vietnam veterans on our show earlier this week, talking about the next generation, talking about the influence of serving in the United States military and the impact it has on our families, on our lives, on our homes, and on this nation for our freedoms. So if you have not had a chance, hop over to my YouTube channel, Common Sense America with Eden Hill, and check out the interview I did with Stuart Risdick and Jim Zumwalt. Both Vietnam veterans and both love this nation more than anything. And I received a couple comments from them privately. Evidently, a couple Eastern North Carolina retired Marines saw the interview and were messaging them privately. So thank you to Eastern North Carolina. Thank you to this military community. Thank you to this veteran community for supporting Common Sense America. Also, I wanted to let you know, if you are looking to attend a Memorial Day service, there will be one here in Swansboro, right down the road from Cedar Point, where we live here in Eastern North Carolina, on Monday, May the 29th. And it starts at 10 a.m. and it's at Sanders Park. And I'm just going to put up the banner really quickly for you to see if by chance you are looking to attend an event to honor those who have died. It is Community of Swansboro and surrounding areas will be hosting a Memorial Day service May the 29th, 10 a.m., 283 Swansboro Loop Road, Swansboro, North Carolina at Sanders Park. Just going to keep that up there for one more second, just in case you were looking to attend a special service. So for all of those, thank you so much for your service. We have many more great veteran stories coming to you. I love how you love these veteran stories. And you know how much I love telling them. So thanks to Jim and Stu, we have many more amazing Vietnam veteran stories coming to you. And I usually don't promote ABC News, but last night, in the last half of the show, they talked about our POWs from Vietnam and the 50th anniversary. And one of them you have seen on this show, Ev Alvarez. He was featured on the ABC News interview with four others, I believe, who came home from Vietnam. Ev Alvarez is one of the longest Vietnam veteran, POW Vietnam veterans. And if you haven't had a chance to check out what is happening, it's the 50th anniversary this month, and it's a powerful month. Month is the month of the military appreciation of May. military spouse, armed forces, and Memorial Day. But yet we are also celebrating our Vietnam veterans and the celebration they did not get when they came home. So if you have a chance, go check out Ev Alvarez's book, Unchained Eagle. And you know what? Something Stu said the other day in our conversation. He said, for the next generation, go visit some veterans. I had mentioned VFWs and American Legions, but he also said the veterans hospitals. And I said, that's a phenomenal idea. I don't know if they're going to be more restrictive because of the COVID policies enacted, but I want to encourage our young Americans and those who are coming up to be able to have that opportunity to go thank a veteran. No, we're not at Veterans Day yet, but Veterans Day is every day here at Common Sense America. So that is my veteran rant for today. So as we head into this amazing Friday, it's a little cloudy here in Eastern North Carolina, but that's okay. The sun's shining right here at Common Sense America. And we're going to bring over some more sunshine. Elizabeth Clamon, she is the author of Beauty Rising from Brokenness. And this is, ladies and gents, the roadmap you may have been looking for. Dr. Elizabeth Clamon, good morning. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. I am doing amazing. How are you?
Good, good. It's so nice to meet you. Welcome to Common Sense America, and welcome and thank you. Have you been at NRB all week?
I have been at NRB all week, and I so appreciated what you just said because I have had my veteran with me all week, helping me and supporting me. So my husband is a 33-year retired vet of the Air Force, and every conflict we've just about had since Desert Storm, he's been a part of.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. So we are veteran spouses together joining the show. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. So you were married to him during all the conflicts that he was a part of.
I was married to him when he enlisted. It was a choice we made together.
Oh,
So
wow.
we've been married for 38 years and we served for 33.
Oh my goodness. So you have seen probably every aspect of this earth.
Yes.
Almost.
Yes.
Almost.
Yes.
I'm sure you have many stories too, but let's talk about that. This book, Beauty Rising from Brokenness, I was looking at the back end, and now that I know you have this background, I can't help but think that this book and your journey is filtered throughout this whole book and could bring healing to our active duty military spouses because they're hurrying up and waiting, or a veteran spouse or a veteran caregiver. So, that's a mentality I live in because we're here in Eastern North Carolina and we're surrounded by Camp Lejeune, Fort Bragg, Cherry Point, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. We were just there last weekend for the Blue Angels.
That's our last duty station. That's where we retired from, was Seymour Johnson.
Oh, wow. Oh,
yeah, so we have a whole lot in common.
We do. I love it. Now, where are you based out of now? Where are you?
Now we call our home base is Mineola, Texas. We actually live in our RV and we travel to speak and to write books and publish books and do book signings. And we've done that since he retired a year and a half ago. And so home base happens to be our covered parking spot in our son's backyard on his 4.5 acres.
Oh my goodness. You know what? My husband said to me, he was 22 years Army. And he said to me, he's like, or 23 years, he says, what if we just packed up everything and got an RV and traveled? I said, you have traveled the world and you always tell me you don't want to travel anymore. So how's that going to work? I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But I know where he was going with it. He, downsizing,
Yes.
just doing things together more.
Yes. And that was
Yeah.
my dream. When my husband retired, I wanted us to do ministry together. So I have been praying for years and years and years for us to do ministry together. And so when we've had a dream of traveling and seeing the United States in our RV since forever. And so we just decided when we retired, we were going to just do it. So we did. We downsized from a 1,700 square foot house into a pod and this RV.
Oh, my word.
One pod and one RV. Our children got a lot of furniture. They got blessed with a lot of things.
Oh, well, I applaud you. My husband has his Army gear. He has his Army gear, and he has all of his taxidermied animals he's collected over the years. And he said, I don't have enough room where we are. We just moved into a new house in the same area we live in. He was like, I don't know where I'm going to put it all. He's like, I'm going to have to downsize even more. And so that's just been the ongoing conversation in our house now. But I want to talk about you. This book, when Jasmine reached out to me, she called me and we kept missing each other. And I was looking at the back end of your book. I'm going to put up the cover right now, it's going to block the screen, but I want everybody to see. It's such a beautiful cover. And let me remove the banner. Beauty Rising from Brokenness, Journey Through Childhood Trauma and Chronic Illness into Healing. That has so many different levels to it. So
Yes.
Let's talk about the chronic illness first, because I know so many people who have chronic illnesses and I don't think they know how to approach it. And you are a naturopath too, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
I filled my time while my husband was deployed.
Oh, I bet. Well, let's break it down with the chronic illness piece first and then go backwards to the childhood trauma. Talk to me about that.
Well, what I find is women, especially, we bury that. And a lot of men, especially, it applies definitely to the military and to serving. It's, PTSD, and we try to function and keep everything together and keep it going. And eventually it's like what I tell people when I speak is, and sometimes I'm able to do a demonstration to even show them, but it's like a beach ball that we just hold under the water. And the longer we hold it, the more buoyant it gets and it starts to pop up. And then eventually we just can't hold it in anymore. And it just pops up. And where we thought we were walking through life, fooling everybody about the mess that we had going on inside of us, that beach ball is floating on top of the water for the whole world to see. For me, it came in my 30s, and I find that a lot with a lot of women. Some reason we get to our 30s and it all catches up with us. And I went from being a dormant volcano sitting in my room, crying and staring at a wall and rocking in a rocking chair, to the next minute I would just explode like a volcano in anger. And I had all this anger built up in me. And of course, when a volcano explodes, who does the lava hit first?
Right.
Those closest.
Exactly.
My husband and my children caught it, and it was terrible. I was having severe bouts of depression, severe bouts of asthma and bronchitis, and also chronic fatigue syndrome. And I found out through my studies in naturopathic medicine that traditional Chinese medicine says that grief manifests in the airways. So I was really grieving all of that from my childhood and losing my innocence, losing that little girl. That little girl inside me was grieving. And I needed to take care of her and let her grieve and heal. And so that's the journey that I went on.
What, if I may ask, and if you're able to talk about, can you talk just a little bit about what happened to that little girl?
I was born to a single mom in 1965 in rural Louisiana with a grandfather who was a member of the church, and that did not happen in his home. They did not even know my mother was expecting me. They rushed her to the emergency room thinking that she was having an appendicitis attack. And surprise, aren't I the most beautiful appendix you've ever seen?
Oh my gosh. Is that the opening line you use wherever you go?
That is one of the lines I use when I speak. Ta-da! I can only imagine how shocked my grandparents were and my mother, because she says she did not know. She had no idea. She was 19.
Really? The whole time your mom just hit it so was she a tiny lady too that it just, even a little? Oh my word.
I don't know. She hasn't been tiny since. So, but nobody in my family is really tiny. So I don't think so. But, I just think that she was very, very young. I know 19 seems old now, but then she was, that was young. And she had grown up in a very small community, very small school. And she'd gone away to the big city of Jackson, Mississippi to study at secretarial school. And that's where she met my biological father, who happened to be married and already have a child.
Oh,
and she did not know that. And so
oh,
she just let herself be talked into things that she didn't know she was doing, or she didn't, you know, that wasn't ready for, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So that part of you, were you raised by your grandparents then after they figured out you weren't an appendix?
Yeah, well, my grandfather set up an adoption for me immediately. Was not even going to bring me home, and have no way was that going to happen. But the Lord intervened, and a gentleman from our community asked him to ride with him over to Mississippi, where he had his cows pastured, to check on his cows.
Mhm.
And in that ride, he shared with my grandfather that his daughter had gotten pregnant in high school, and they'd sent her away to an unwed mother's home and given the baby up for adoption. And how much regret he had, and how sad he
Mm.
was to never know his grandchild, and the damage that it had done to his daughter. And my grandmother told me when he came home that he had a complete change of heart and told them they could bring me home.
Oh, wow. So then they ended up raising you with your mother?
My grandparents raised me as their child,
Okay.
until I was almost 6. I had
Okay.
no idea that my mother wasn't my sister, or my grandparents weren't my parents. And that's how I went through life. My mother had younger siblings, so they were my brothers and sisters, and that was life. Then my grandfather had a massive heart attack when I was just over 5, and passed away. And a single woman in that day could not
Right.
adopt a child,
Right.
and they were in the process of adopting me at the time.
Mm.
And she already had 2 children she had to continue to finish raising. And so my biological mother eloped with a man that she worked with, ran off and married him, came back, took me away from my home on the farm and my grandmother, and took me across the strait, gave me no explanation, but I'm your mother, he's your father, no further questions, and dropped me off at daycare the next day.
How old were you when this happened? 5, you said?
I was almost 6.
That's a lot for that age to comprehend.
Yes, it was. Well, it's just so confusing, and you have all these feelings of abandonment,
Right.
and you don't understand, and I just wanted to go home. And vividly remember sitting at the table at daycare and just crying all day. And
Mhm.
the sweet little ladies would come out of the kitchen, and they'd sit down, and they'd try to comfort me, and it's okay. And I'd say, I want my mom, I want to go home. And they say, she's going to be here in a little while.
And
And
you
I
were like,
just kept
"No,
saying,
not
you
that
don't
one."
understand. You don't understand.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
I remembered that probably cried for about 2 weeks before I finally decided I was going to have to suck it
Adjust.
up and
Yeah.
adjust and just get on with life. But every chance I got, well, every time I was sick or an inconvenience, they shipped me back to grandma's, which was where I wanted to be in the first place.
Right. So you were
That
fine.
was
You were fine.
normal.
Get me sick so I can go home. Right.
Yes,
Right.
yes, please. Somebody give me chicken pox. I need to go home.
Oh, so that chronic piece and that that all started to erupt in you and during your 30s. Is that what all really started pulling? You had never really grieved it, you had never really processed it, and then it was all coming to the surface once you
Right.
hit your 30s. Did it even occur? Did you even feel anything when you were having your own babies? Did any psychological piece affect you at that point either?
Not when I was having my babies. I was just thrilled to have a family of my own, and to be
Mm,
able to raise them the way I thought they needed to be raised,
right,
and to be
right,
able to care for them and love them the way that I didn't feel like I got, and
right,
protect them. I was quite a helicopter mom. So we didn't have that term then, but
right.
I was so, because I did, in the home of my mom and my stepfather, suffered emotional abuse, physical abuse, was sexually abused as well. And so it was just chaos all the time. And I did not want my kids to grow up like that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
was determined that they would have a different life.
Right.
And and really in my teen years, I was very rebellious. My grandmother led me to the Lord, took me to church. And, that's how I was raised when I was with her.
Yeah.
But and that was every summer, every time I was out of school, I was just happy and free to be a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when I hit my teen years, man, I rebelled like
You
you
went
would
like
not
crazy.
believe. And then I met my husband,
Mhm.
and defied my mother and my entire family and married him anyway after only dating for 4 months.
You know what, though? You know what? My parents who've been married 40, let's see, I'm going to be 46. They're going to be 47 years this year. 6 months they were
Hmm.
married on Valentine's Day, 1976. I
Oh, how
mean,
cool.
yeah, but what I guess I was going to say to that is when you know, you know. And
Right, right.
what, 33 years or 38 years you said
38.
together?
Mhm, last
Yeah.
December, 38.
Yeah. So, okay, let's break down this book. So, you heard my audience. It is a lot of retirees. But it's also military spouses, military families. But then this show was birthed out of my loss when I ran for state house last year. But here's the thing, what we have more power doing is our kitchen table discussions, whether we're the guardians or grandparents of kids, whether we are middle age, whether we are in retirement age. Our kitchen table conversations have greater power than any presidential speech, than anybody's decisions at our highest levels of government. Our kitchen table discussions. Talk to me, and I want to pull from this book. Talk to me about the book and where this can be around our kitchen table, whether it is a small group Bible study, whether it is friend to friend, just sitting down having coffee, saying, you know what, you need to be my vault today. I need to share something that's been happening and I can't talk to anybody else. Or a married couple sitting down and saying, okay, let's go through this. Let's talk about healing. Let's talking about journeys. Let's talking about life. Let's talking about application. So where can your book come into that kitchen table discussion?
You know, I heard, and I find this with so many people I speak to. I heard this weekend one of the speakers say, how many people are in your churches? They're sitting in your small groups, they're in your circle, and they're the walking wounded, and you don't even
Yes.
know. And
Yes.
that's what I
Yes.
was. I was the walking wounded. And I was putting on a show and denying all of that inside of me. That was all, and denying all the abuse, everything. I knew it happened. It's not like
Mhm.
I had repressed memories. I knew, I remembered everything, but I
Mhm.
just didn't talk about it. I just buried it like a
Mhm.
lot of our vets do. And then it
Yes.
surfaces
Yes.
in PTSD. And that's
Yes,
what
it
my
does.
counselor told me one time. I said, how would you diagnose this? And she said, PTSD. And I said, but that's what guys get when they come back from war
Yeah.
zones. She said, honey, you grew up in a war zone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then it was like,
Agreed.
whoa,
Agreed.
you're
Yes.
right. And
Mhm.
so I think for us, if we need, I didn't even tell my husband. And I asked him after I went through this volcano period. And finally, he came home from work one day for lunch, and my daughters grabbed him around the legs before he went back. And they said, can we go back to work with you? And he said, you know, you can't go back to work with me. And they said, but we don't want to stay here with her.
With her.
With her, because that's how angry and how much volcanic ash and lava was spewing everywhere. I had been on a rant that morning about rollerblades. We had a school, I homeschooled, and so we had a homeschool skating party, and my daughter could not find her rollerblades. And I had just been on a tangent all morning about those rollerblades,
Mhm.
and they just did not want to stay there with me. And that I just was like, okay, this is enough. I
Yeah.
need help.
That was the
And
turning point for you.
yes, that was my aha moment. No, I'm not having this, because that's how I always felt at my mother's home. I don't want to be here. Can I please go somewhere else? And I
Yeah.
thought, no, I'm not doing that. And
Yeah.
I went and got help. And it wasn't until then that I went to my counselor, and she really pushed me. And that's something else I want to tell people. Be sure that you get the right counselor for you.
Oh,
Everybody doesn't fit everybody.
exactly.
My doctor gave me a list of counselors in my area that my insurance covered, and I literally went down the list and interviewed them
Mhm.
and asked them questions to be sure our beliefs lined up.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until she pushed me to say out loud the things that had happened to me that I was able to tell my husband and admit to my husband. I asked my husband, and he said, I knew, I just didn't know who.
Oh,
He always knew.
wow.
I thought I was hiding it so well, but we're not hiding as well as we think we are, especially to
Yeah.
those who are closest to us.
hmm
But I think we need to talk about those things. That was something I never, ever, ever kept from my children. I told them about the story of my birth and the story of not having a father. And, as soon as they were old enough to understand. And my girls are 7 and 5 years older than my son, so he's quite a bit younger. And I remember vividly the day the girls were asking me a question about something. And he goes, "Mom, what are you talking about?" And he was about 6 or 7, and I
Right.
had not shared the whole story with him. And I said, "Well, I have something to tell you." And I told him that my stepdad was not his grandfather, that I had a different father.
Mhm.
And he looked at me with these big, bright, like 6, 7-year-old eyes. And he goes,
Yeah.
"Is my daddy my daddy?" And I said, "Of course your daddy is your daddy." And he goes, "But but I'm not going to say, I don't use names, but he's not my papa." And I said, "No, honey, he's not your papa." And you know what response I got? "Yes."
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And that's when it dawned on me what my children were going through in a relationship with them that I never ever wanted, and that I had to change things. I had
Yes,
to I
yes.
had to set boundaries, and unfortunately they couldn't live with my boundaries, and they chose not to be in our lives, and they
Mm,
haven't been in our lives since then. And people ask me so many times, "Oh, aren't you sad? Aren't you?" I hate it. I love them, but I have to love them from a distance, and I have to pray
right,
for them from a distance.
right,
It's been nothing but a relief not to have to continue to live a lie when I'm with
right,
them,
right, right.
because they won't accept the truth. So I think you need to share.
Yeah,
We That's something I could stay trapped in shame and guilt for so many years, and it wasn't my shame and it wasn't my guilt,
right,
but I
right.
that's what I was put on me, and I
hmm
carried it. And I think we need to be honest with those around us, and we need to talk to them, because that's what happens is we keep it hidden, and it makes us sick. It's called adverse childhood experiences. It's
hmm
ACEs. And you can go in, and there's an assessment you can take, and those things that we experience, even in utero, affect us later in life. And it can
hmm
cause all kinds of chronic illness,
Yes.
diabetes, obesity, all sorts of other illnesses that we
Yeah.
don't even realize.
Right.
And so
Right.
we need to get healing for that trauma, so that we can have healing later in our life, and we can have healing if we're suffering from those chronic illnesses.
Let me ask you about self-care. So once you realize what you went through, let's talk about application to self-care. I find self-care is so important. And it's not a social justice thing, and it's not this or it's not that. It is, you need to take care of yourself, whatever role you play, whether you are a guardian of your grandkids, whether woke up and you're like, oh my word, I have to take care of these kids, my something happened, right?
Right.
Tragedies happen. um, Talk to us about what are some of the best applications we can do to say to self-care. And I'll go with you on the whole nutrition piece and the naturopath piece. My mama raised us on vitamins,
Mhm.
not not all your antibiotics, not all of the 10,000 vaccinations. I don't want to go down that point, but that is something we did not do.
Right.
The other piece of it is fast forward to current day. I do acupuncture. I do yoga, but without the whole Buddha meditation. I do the yoga for the strength training. Love acupuncture. Love it. And I also get with friends who I are confident that we can do the self-care conversations. Those
Yes.
are three things I can just say to anybody, ways to self-care. If you can't afford it, there are other things that you can do. But what are some of your applications to self-care through trauma that we can say, man, woman, child, who can understand this conversation at that point? What can we say to them?
Well, I walk you through that in the book, actually,
Oh,
healing
you
mentally,
do? Okay.
physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I walk you through how I walked through healing and the things that I did that helped me and things that you can apply. So it is combination memoir, self-help.
Okay.
And so I, emotionally and spiritually, it's getting into counseling, getting someone who can, you can talk to, even if it's a friend, even if it's got to be somebody you can trust who won't talk behind your back, but
Right.
somebody
Exactly.
you can confide in.
Mhm.
And believe me, there are plenty of us out there. You're not the only one. I stayed trapped in the only one, the only one. You're the only one. Don't tell anybody. It's just you. Be ashamed. Be ashamed. It is far from not just you.
Mhm.
And then some other things that I did was I had to detoxify my body because
Yes.
all of that stress and all of those things that I held in were toxic. So I
Yes.
went through healing with distilled water, drinking tons and tons of distilled water. I did detoxifying herbal supplements.
Mhm.
Like there's one for your liver called Liver Care 52.
Yeah.
It's an amazing cleanser. There are tons of them on the market. And I went through processes of detoxifying my body and then putting healthy healing things in my body. So I went to Whole Foods. I did Whole Foods, fruits, vegetables, organic meats, organic
Mhm.
dairy. And, and I also went through and did the test of was I allergic to
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I did the blood test and they said that I was allergic to dairy, all forms of dairy, even sheep and goats and all that. So I try to eliminate as much dairy as I possibly can
Mhm.
from my
Mhm.
diet. And then spiritually, I just spend a lot of time meditating on God's word,
Yes.
praying, and quoting scriptures. One thing I did that I suggest everyone do is I would, when, because that's, you're getting lies. You've been told
Yes.
lies and you're telling
Yes.
yourself lies. Those
Mhm.
lies are running through your head. So
Mhm.
for every lie, I went in scripture and I found the truth and I
Yes.
wrote that scripture on a 5x7 card,
Mhm.
multiple 5x7 cards, and I would put them on the above the sink, on my bathroom mirror,
Yes.
beside my bed, and in my purse. My son even remarked that she even had them on the doorknobs. We couldn't go out the door, and I said, "That's okay. Got the word in you and in me. So stop your fussing." And so, and then every time that light popped into my head, I said that verse out loud because
Yeah.
I replaced that. And that is a loop that runs in your head. It's like the old
Yes, it
cassette
is.
tapes that we used to
Yes,
have.
it is.
And
Yes.
you have to erase it and put the truth over it. And
Yes.
so that's what I did. I started putting the truth. And I have now a recipe box of 2 actually with all those cards in them.
Mhm.
One copy of each of those cards. And I have them, in there and organized.
Yes.
And so I can go back and pull those out. And I want something I want to leave for my kids and grandkids that they can do. So spiritually, those are things that I did to
Mhm.
try. And then something else, I cut out all negative and
Mhm.
sad out of my life. I don't watch sad movies. I don't listen to
The
secular
news.
music. I don't watch. Yes, exactly. I have my couple of little shows that I like that I
Yeah.
watch,
Yeah.
but sometimes I can't even watch those as it's too much.
Yeah.
But back then I didn't watch any. I cut all of it out for
Yeah.
a period of time. But
It's a
I don't let
cleansing.
any of that
Cleansing.
in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also had to cut out negative people. And
Yes.
that was hard because I'm a people person. I love people. I've
Yeah.
had the best time at NRB this week, meeting people and talking with them. But there are people who are a drag and a draw on you.
Yes.
And sometimes even just for a season, you have to step away. And I explained to them, I just can't do this right now. I have to take care of myself. I have to take care
Yes.
of me. I
Yes.
went for long walks by myself,
Mhm.
put my headphones in, and I told my kids, I put my headphones in and I put my eye mask on and I sleep. And I'm like, if my eye mask is on and my headphones are in, unless somebody's bleeding, I'm
Yeah.
not here. So,
Yeah.
it's just like I'm gone. I went for long drives,
Mhm.
listening to positive music,
Mhm.
just anything, getting in nature. That is one of the biggest things that
Yes.
you can do. And like right now, we're at Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
we're on the beach. We've
Yeah.
been driving to Orlando, but
Yes.
we're on the road right now speaking and doing book signings. And so that's our summer. We'll be on the road. We'll actually be up close to your area in July.
Oh,
And
really?
we'll be up in Goldsboro. So
Oh,
yes.
wow. Well, please. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you next as we wrap, because I'm going to bring over your colleague Michael Stickler next.
Oh, Mike's here. Good.
Yeah, he's joining. He's joining right after you. He's sitting there in the waiting area. But let me ask. He's waving. He, but let me ask you. I wanted to wrap this where can my guests find you? Because they watch the show even after it's not live. They watch it on YouTube and on my social channels. But where can they find you, and where can they request you to come speak? And I love the fact that you are coming to Eastern North Carolina in July, and that would be another great opportunity. Are you going to be speaking to a church group, a women's group? What will you be
We
doing?
have a pastor there in Goldsboro that we're working with right now. My husband and I also do marriage ministry. So we have a conference over in Tampa that we're speaking together from stage. We have a podcast called Hope and Faith with Sweet Tea and Sass. And I'm Sass.
No kidding.
And yes, I know, surprising, isn't it? And he's very much sweet tea. He's very sweet. He would have to be to live with me this long. And we're going to be speaking at the Soul Wind Conference over in Tampa and in June.
Okay.
And then we'll be up in North Carolina, and we're working with the pastor up there to hopefully do a marriage workshop while we're there. And
Okay.
so I can I can email you some information about that.
Yeah, that would be great. I also put this up here for a couple people to check out. So on the feed itself has your link to your book so where people can go and order it. So we will continue to keep that up there. They will see that throughout the whole show.
And you can also get it on my website as well. And that's where they can find me, The Clamon Group. And it's CLAMON.
Okay.
Or ElizabethClamon.com. Both are .coms. And they can find me anywhere if they just put Elizabeth Clamon, CLAMON, Clam on. I'm on all the social media everywhere.
Oh,
And
fabulous.
so they can find me
Fabulous.
there. And then to email me, it's Elizabeth@ElizabethClamon.com. And those come straight to me. Because a lot of times I have people who want to talk to me about their story, and they're concerned that somebody else is going to see those emails.
Yes.
That email comes directly to me.
Oh, that's really good to know, because you're right. A lot of people, the invasion of privacy, that piece is a
Yes.
huge deal. I'm going to bring Michael over here really quickly before I let you go. I just had to have the two of you on here. How are you, sir? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. It's good to see Elizabeth again. We just saw each other yesterday, so this is great.
And well, actually, while I have the two of you here, can you give me an update on how NRB was this year, and what were some of the takeaways for the authors, the leaders, the commentators there at NRB?
National Religious Broadcaster Convention, for the author or the viewers that don't know, NRB is what we call it. It's the largest Christian media gathering in the world. Everybody that you can possibly think of that's in Christian media comes, and it was the biggest show since 2011.
Wow.
And Governor DeSantis spoke as our opening keynote speaker, and we had several other.
I bet you guys love that.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, she was doing a book signing. She did multiple book signings throughout the event, along with many of our other authors. And when we come here, we work, and so we're all working very hard. And yet it's just a great show. Got to see guys like John Solomon and visit with him a little bit. One of the greatest reporters, in my view, anyway, in America today. And
just the news.
Podcasters and television media. If you can imagine, you could walk down the hallway and there's just one television program or radio program going on at a time, all the way down the hallway as you walk along. And of course, the exhibitor booths are great. The speakers were great. I gave a presentation on being a book publisher and author. That was great fun. And so really glad we're here. We're still in Orlando, still in that hotel, and we're going to be flying back to the West tonight. So.
Oh, Wonderful. Well, thank you for the overview. Dr. Elizabeth Clamon, thank you so much for being here at Common Sense America. Thank you for your husband. Please tell your husband thank you for his service. And thank you for your service. And I look forward to seeing you in July. Let's get together in July.
Yes, sounds great. I will send you an email. Thank you so much. And Mike, rest that voice, drink lots of hot tea.
Thank you. I'm drinking some coffee this morning and still trying to wake up.
Me too. Me too. Thank you so much. And we will talk soon.
All right. Many blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, Michael, it's so nice to meet you. I was checking out all of your books. I am a publicist, a communications director, former comms for President Trump, and have this podcast and loved seeing all the books that you are a best-selling author and that you also are sought after speaker. I can tell since you are barely, I'm going to make it easy on you this morning with your voice. And one thing that I was looking at was your 19th book, Ghost Patriot. And it's your first political fiction genre. Is that correct?
It is. And I think it's going to be the first in a long series of them. I had so much fun writing this book. And I've already been working on the next one, which is called Patriot Insurrection.
So I have Ghost Patriot up. I love the cover. Who designed the cover? It's absolutely stunning.
It was a custom design from our art team. They put it together. They commissioned a couple of artists. Mm-hmm. And what's funny, just as a side note, it had to pass through our intellectual lawyers' property a review like 5 times in order to make sure that somebody didn't get offended or sued, or we didn't get sued over it or something like that. And so, yeah, it's an amazing piece of art. If you look at it, it's the man on the front image there is a man dressed in colonial uniform, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yet he's got modern armory. He has the shehag rag that's around his neck that's common from coming from the Middle East, from our warriors who are coming back from the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And it really, in my mind, it really states the idea of patriotism.
Yes.
And the kind of combat that we're in. And then, of course, it's got the background of
the Capitol,
mm-hmm. and all the different things that are going on in our country.
Yes.
Even today.
Yes. No, it's a beautiful cover. I absolutely love it, but I can understand why you had to have it checked legally. That makes perfect sense. So talk to me about the overview of this book. I have a lot of authors come to this show. They're talking, and you talked to what is happening in our nation. We do a lot of politics and a lot of book coverage here at the show at Common Sense America. It's a very conservative audience here. It's also a very military-friendly audience. We live here in Camp Lejeune area of Eastern North Carolina. My husband's Army. So that scarf, he came from Iraq, and he has quite a few of those. So we also live in very much a retirement area. So talk to us about the book and how it would appeal to that type of an audience here for Common Sense America.
What's funny is a backstory as an author. Most of the books I've written are Christian books. Mm-hmm. And in 2017, I released a book about a man named Cliven Bundy. It's my first non-Christian book. Cliven was a guy who had a standoff, you guys all might remember, with the federal government in the desert of Nevada back in 2014. Mm-hmm. I released that book in 2017, and it was an exceptional hit. In fact, we've optioned it into a movie, so we'll probably be seeing a movie, actually a docuseries coming mm-hmm. out in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. But what it did for me is it created 2 audiences. I had a Christian audience that followed my work, and now I have this audience of patriots that follow my work. And at the time, I had well over 250,000 copies sold, and it's going way beyond that now. And that audience was asking for more. Real events to report on, don't always happen. And I didn't really want to be the author that just traveled around and reported on those kinds of things. What I wanted to, so I set out to create a fiction book that was pulled from the headlines. Now, I am a Tom Clancy fan. Okay?
Yes, same here.
Tom Clancy.
Yes.
His books would keep me awake until 2 or 3 in the morning as I kept reading, you know?
Yes.
And so I decided for the first time ever, I would write a fiction book. And I set out, and what I did is I pulled headlines. I'm adept to research, so I did a lot of research.
Mhm.
For your viewers, I was never in the military. I've never pointed a gun at anybody, and yet I put a lot of work into like my combat scenes and the comms between the different characters in the book. I actually brought in a Navy SEAL who
Mhm.
helped me do that because I didn't know. I mean, I thought my combat scenes, for all I know, they were just totally malarkey, you know. And he really helped me with those and really helped me with the communication process.
Mhm.
And so, what the story's about is some men and women, a ragtag group of men and women who are bound together. In a circumstance, I don't want to give away too much, you know. So they were bound together in a circumstance that they were just plunged together in.
Mhm.
All of them, but three, excuse me, were ex-military. One's a buckaroo cowboy from Nevada,
Mhm.
and one is a very liberal reporter.
Mhm.
And the third one is a woman who's in love with the Marine that's in my little band.
Uh-huh.
And the country is plunged into um, in a major catastrophe. Ironically, you laugh about this, but I actually have an entire chapter, or actually a couple of chapters, about a protest at the Virginia State Capitol, and we called it an insurrection. And I wrote that in 2019.
Oh, you did.
I did. And having no idea January 6th was going to come up, you know.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's really, and the parallels are mind-boggling, okay, between
Mhm.
what happened January 6th and what I wrote in the book.
Mhm.
And so the country is thrust into this tragedy, and the book is about how do the citizens of America respond. And of
Mhm.
course, my key group of characters are part of that, but the corruption of the FBI is in there. The border, people being smuggled across the border, and actually terrorists being smuggled across the border.
Mhm.
Um, the difference between the coastlines and how the worldview of the coastlines, and then the central part of the country.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very fast paced. It's written more like a screenplay than a
Okay.
book,
Okay.
and it moves you very quickly through some great scenarios
Okay.
and a conclusion. I'm very proud of the work, and I've gotten just great reviews on it.
I was looking at them on your website. Let
Yeah.
me, I want to pull up a couple. I still have them posted here because I was studying up on you. A perfect book for a rainy day, only you will not put it down. Ghost Patriot from start to finish is an action-packed, thought-provoking page turner that you will not want to put down. If you are familiar with Clive and Bundy standoff and love patriotism at its core, this is a must read. Definitely on my holiday shopping list. You know, as Michelle Smith said that, I'm sitting here thinking Father's Day is coming up right around the corner. What a great gift for Father's Day, adding it to the shopping list. It doesn't have to be Christmas or Thanksgiving or birthdays, but we do have Father's Day. We do have July 4th. We have our patriotic holidays as we head into Memorial Day this weekend. You know, this show has been about God, country, and family. And the patriotism at the core is what Michelle said in that review for your book. As you were at NRB this week, and you looked around at the Christian media, and this audience is very familiar with NRB. I've been talking and having NRB guests on for the past month. What did you feel, just outside looking in, but also from your Christian perspective of the books you've written and then now this book? What do you see across America and at NRB as it comes to the very patriotism, the very core of our nation, and the Christian foundation principles it's been founded upon?
So, just as a side note, years ago, I was mentored by Chuck Colson,
Yeah, yeah.
and Chuck said to me in one of those moments of just face to face, and it was kind of a quiet moment. He probably said it to others, but he said it to me. And it stuck with me. And he said, Mike, the Christian worldview is the only one that actually aligns with reality.
Let that sink in for a second.
Yeah. It's really what I saw at NRB, and I think where our country needs to hold the line, if you will, is in the matter of truth. Truth does matter. When we deviate from the truth, whether it's our personal truth as we speak to people and as we portray our situations, and more importantly, how reality actually works. Okay. This craziness that we're going through over identifying genders, or just kept repeating a lie over and over again until it became the truth. As an example, we mentioned Cliven Bundy. The government says and still says, and the media repeats it, that he owes $1 million. And that's just a lie. It was actually created by a CNN contributor. I tracked it all the way down, who just said it in passing. Well, he must owe $1 million. And that became the narrative.
Yes.
Which was completely untrue.
Right.
And we watch this over and over again. And we need to stand on the truth personally. And when it comes up in our discourse and in our world, we need to stop and say, that is not true. The truth is this.
Right.
What aligns to God's word? Because he created reality for us.
Yes.
And that's what we have to anchor ourselves to.
Yes.
And so that's been my passion. I think we, as both in the media, especially conservative media, but also as Christians, we have to start pushing back firmly and even aggressively on what the truth is.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I've had other faith-based authors on this show, and I've had other faith leaders on this show. And I said, when is the church going to wake up to start pushing back? Because it looks, and truth versus fiction, facts, foundation. But you look around ever since COVID, and you look around, and I know it's been going on a lot longer than that, but I think that time period really put the light on the church, and the fact that there's so much more darkness in the church than there ever has been before, because the church is going along with these culture wars. They're not standing up for truth. They're not standing up for scripture. So where is it that we in the Christian realm, in that cultural space, can push back even harder? And don't you think the church needs to rise up even more so than ever before to push back?
There's no doubt about it, and when we do wake up, we're a formidable force. I mean, we're the ones that began the abolishment of slavery. We're the ones that began the right for women to vote. We're the ones who, Christians, are the ones who put our foot down and said, it is time to live the promises of the Constitution.
Yes.
In treating people of a different ethnicity equally. Okay. One of the things I feel, I'm 62 years old. I came through the very tail end of the civil rights movement. I was just a child, but I very much remember Vietnam. I very much remember my brothers and my brothers' friends coming home and my cousins coming home from Vietnam.
Yeah.
And their love for their Black and brown brothers, because they were in the foxholes with them. They were fighting, they were carrying each other out, and they loved one another. I argue often that it was the Vietnam War that actually was the breakthrough in race relations than any other. The concepts were there. Martin Luther King Jr. certainly set the tone, but it was that hard sweat, blood, and those men coming back and putting their foot down that changed this country. And you know what I find that generation, and mine too, feel betrayed from where we're going today.
Yes.
We say, wait a minute, we fought so that every person, we judge person by their character, right?
Yes.
And we fought for that. And now you're reversing it all the way back to, it only matters what your skin color is. And that's insane.
It is insane.
It's an insane kind of thought. And so we need to push back. And then when we rise up, we're a formidable force. When we rise up really depends on the Holy Spirit, in my opinion. But we got to wake up and start putting our foot down, showing up to rallies, speaking out, and more importantly, right in the marketplace, pushing back. I'll give you a short idea about that. I was I was at a bagel restaurant the other day, and I was sitting there alone, and I was looking at the newspaper, and this guy leans over next to me, and it was real close, and he says, "Boy, it's amazing how our country got messed up by Trump. Aren't you glad we're here?" And I looked at him. I said, no, I'm not. I'm a conservative guy, and I barely got those words out. I'm a conservative guy, and he goes, "Oh, so you're for polluting the world and racism?" And he listed this whole punch list of liberal talking points.
Indoctrination.
Yeah, and I just looked at him and I said, "What is the matter with you? No, I don't know anybody that wants pollution. I don't know a soul on earth that wants people to be treated unjustly. Why would you think that we were this way?" And my answer to him dumbfounded him. He never even thought. He just thought we were the enemy.
Right.
Instead of recognizing that,
right.
I'm a guy that has kids and grandkids, and I want the best for them, and I want the best for the community around me, and I want the best for the people next to me, and I even want the best for that guy, even though he was very irritating. So
how did that conversation end? Because I'll share something very similar that happened to me when I was running.
He shut his mouth and just stopped talking, and then just got up and walked away later. It wasn't one of those moments, and I think this is important. It wasn't one of those moments that I convinced anybody. What it was a moment where he got pushed back at, and it made him pause. I know it made him pause, and maybe the next time he just shoots his mouth off, he'll stop and think for a minute. Well, wait a minute, I might have some skin in the game here. This person might actually not just walk away. They might push back at me, and maybe they'll wake up to it. And then I'll get to what your point is. I also have some very liberal friends, people I grew up with and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I engage with them, and I will stay with them as long as they'll communicate with me. I will talk with them and argue with them and debate with them and drive my points home. Not mean, but what we used to call civil discourse. Seems like we don't have that anymore, but continue that civil discourse as long as I can, so people will stop and think a little bit, to get in somebody else's shoes and try to think about where they're coming from.
Well, it goes back to the show, common sense. I believe many people have forgotten about what common sense is. And, I'm not coming out and supporting DeSantis or any other presidential candidate at this point. I am very loyal to my previous boss. But DeSantis did say in his campaign announcement about common sense and how it's become this untrue virtue, if you will, and where it needs to be relevant in today's conversations of having that. And, just to make a little lighthearted comment, I'm going to put this up here. I told my audience that the next 2 people that subscribe to my YouTube channel will get a free shirt. But I announced yesterday, I said, I've tested positive for common sense. Yeah. And I know, but in actuality, it's when we engage these types of people who are made in the image of God, but have been so indoctrinated with this cult and this anger and this behavior that is not of God. Right. And a lot of them are being indoctrinated at their universities, at their school systems, this co-curriculum that they're coming home from university saying, I hate the world, I hate God, I hate this country. And it is a cult. It's a cult-like mentality.
It is.
And when I was running for state house last year, I love meeting with American people. I love the constituency. I love talking with people. Similar to what Elizabeth said, we both are people. I came up and I had my Trump hat on and I had my gear on, and I went to this open event and I was shaking hands, and this lady immediately saw me. She's like, "Oh, no, you work for Trump? No, stay away from me." And instead of disengaging, I engaged.
Right.
I said, I need to hear why. And I sat there very quietly with her. It wasn't heated or anything like that. And my godson was with me. My campaign kids were with me volunteering. And I'm like, they're watching this. We need to handle this the best way possible and not go at each other. And I sat there with her and I asked her, I said, tell me about O'Biden. That's what I call him. Tell me about O'Biden. I said, how has he helped you? She could not answer me. All she knew was the Trump rhetoric that she was being fed.
Right.
and she could not back it up.
You know, I'm a bit of a World War II history buff. My father was in World War II. I like to listen and read about different things and basically how World War II went. And I'll tell you, I'll relate over this in just a second here, but
Sure.
when Trump first ran for office, I didn't support him. I thought he was a loudmouth. I didn't think he had the experience.
Typical New Yorker.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't think about that either. I just didn't like his presence, his kind of flippant. I read a couple of his books. I don't know if you all remember, but Mitt Romney did his famous Never Trump speech before the first election. Okay.
Yeah.
And
not a lot of love between either one of them.
Yeah. And I didn't vote for him. Okay. But once he became president and he started to move through, I really realized that he is actually the right man for the right moment.
Yes.
He's very much like Churchill. People don't know, but Churchill was loud and braggadocious, and he was a great communicator. He was a little bit of a slob, wasn't always well kept. But I'll tell you what, he saved Europe.
Yes,
he was God's man for Europe. In fact, the whole time he was in office, his own cabinet would fight him. Some of his cabinet actually went and tried to negotiate with Hitler. Okay. So real betrayal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yet he stood steadfast through that whole thing. Another thing that people don't know is that Churchill was voted out of office, and then they realized, oh, we made a mistake, and they voted him back into office.
Similarities there.
Yeah. And so what cracks me up is that the liberals all say, oh, Joe Biden is so Churchillian. And I'm like, are you kidding me? He's about as far from that as possible. And why I even support Trump this year is I think he's only the man. I like DeSantis a lot, but I think he is the man that can actually bring this country back into line. And really now he really understands how to do the battle with the deep state.
Yes.
And better than he did before. He kind of went into it naive. I don't think a Fauci would ever cross his doorstep again.
Yeah.
And
you mean the little elf that could?
Yeah. And then eventually he'll get 4 years, and then it'll be DeSantis's turn, in my view.
Right. That's I'm in this full agreement with you.
I just think he's the man for the time right now. He still makes me cringe at times, and he still says things, and I'm just like, oh wow. But I also don't. I try, and I would encourage your listeners this way. I try real hard not to judge people. They don't do it the way I would do it, but I'm also not in their shoes.
Yes.
So,
no, I appreciate your thoughts on that. Yesterday we talked all things politics, and I had two conservative women on here, and we talked about Scott, we talked about Haley, we talked about DeSantis, we talked about Trump. And one thing that continues to resonate with me is the Army, the defense, our national defense, and then our Veterans Affairs. And, I look at Trump and I know what he did for our military, our veterans, the spouses. But the one thing I keep bringing up is we haven't had a commander in chief in a long while who has military background, military service. And that's one thing DeSantis does have. Everybody else does not, to my knowledge.
Right.
But with that said, I am in agreement with you that I still believe Trump still has things that need to be done, need to be finished up.
Yeah.
And the seasoning of DeSantis needs to continue.
Yeah. I just really, you have to look at the man for the time. In the Bible, God would raise up prophets that were not always the easiest people to understand or to believe, but they were the right man or woman at the time. And in this case, he's the right man for this season. If we're going to see it get back, anything back, but he's still not the answer. Jesus Christ is the answer.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
He's just a tool of the living God. He's just a man, a very not broken, but a man of all kinds of faults.
Yes.
Just like everybody else.
As we are. Yes. Right. Yes.
And we have to take the whole package. And then the last thing I would say about why do Christians, I hear this all the time from our liberal friends. Why, as a Christian, would you support a womanizer and a bigot and all those things? Well, first off, Christians overall have always voted for the guy or gal, but that best aligns to biblical principles. Okay, best aligns. Understanding they're not perfect and they're not always believers. In fact, most of the time they're not. And so we as Christians have to align make our vote cast for the guy or gal who best aligns to the Christian worldview. That's going to support our ethics and our values. He's not going to be a perfect guy in it. Okay. Is he going to lie? Yeah, so do I. Is he going to think bad thoughts? Yeah, so do I. Is he going to speak out of turn? Yeah, so do I. But is he driving us in the right direction? And that's where my vote came in when I started to see his policies.
Yes,
and his
policies.
heart. And you can never deny his love for the country and people.
Yes.
His winsomeness when he talks to the Joe average American, he actually listens to him and he actually cares about him. Those things matter. That's where it really comes in. And those are all, by the way, things that Churchill was.
Well, let me ask you this as we wrap this session and for this powerful week here at Common Sense America. We are heading into Memorial Day weekend. A lot of the episodes this week have focused on leadership, looking for a leader, Vietnam veterans, the 50th anniversary of the POWs coming home for Vietnam. And as we were talking about this powerful conversation here and your new book coming out, is there a certain message you would like to leave with this audience? And also with that message, where can we find your book? And I have a lot of authors on here, so I'm going to be starting to do book prizes and giveaways. So if you ever want to send any of your books, we can promote them here at Common Sense America. But talk to me, one final word on Memorial Day. I can tell that Vietnam had an impact on you and the World War II generation as well. With Memorial Day, it's not just about barbecues. It really isn't. Even though my husband, who's a powerful veteran, is on his rec-tech right now making ribs, and I can smell him through the window. And I'm like going crazy.
When we're done, text me your address. I'll fly up.
I will. Not to make light of it, but I would love to have you back to the show. I'd love to have you come back and talk more about what is ahead, what other books you have coming down the pike. But where can people find you? And just a final message for Memorial Day.
So for Ghost Patriot, and I really encourage you to get this. I think what a great thing. Sometimes I don't think to say this like you did. Is it's a great gift for Father's Day. A great gift coming up. By far, more men read the book than women, though usually the women pick it up once the husband buys it. And you can get it at ghostpatriotbook.com. That's ghostpatriotbook.com. Please don't buy it on Amazon. They take all the money and we don't end up making anything. You're supporting a billionaire. Go to ghostpatriotbook.com. Good news, it just came out. And when I say just, last Friday, it came out in paperback.
Okay.
So you can get yourself a copy. I think you'll truly enjoy it. And when you read it, it will inspire you, I believe, into patriotism and caring about our country even more deeply. I put a lot of thought into it, a lot of research into it. Everything I say in it is true and accurate. So for an example, I talk about a Muslim terrorist who Barack Obama actually brought to America, and he lives in Huntington Beach, California. And I did the research, and I made the archetype of that character and put it in the book. Every piece of it is well researched and thought through. And it'll shake your head. You'll just shake your head at it as you read it.
So ghostpatriot.com, is that correct?
Ghostpatriotbook.com.
Ghostpatriotbook.com. I'll post that on the comments section right now before I end the show. Let me go there, ghostpatriotbook.com. And are you on social media?
I'm all over social media. Yeah. Okay. You can find me at Mike Stickler and Michael Stickler. You can also find, I have a group of over 1,000 followers and readers on a Facebook community called Ghost Patriot.
Okay.
Welcome you all to come. When you ask for membership, you get screened, and it's only because we get a lot of trolls that go in, try to get in, but you'll get in very quickly. And I think you'll find a whole bunch of like-minded folks that love to talk about our country.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being here. Thank you so much for what you are doing to just raise the flag on patriotism and raising the awareness for our next generation who have the potential to be the next greatest generation. And that is so important to this nation.
It really is.
So thank you so much. Please private chat me your information, and I'm going to wrap this show and look forward to really bringing you back and talking more about your books and what's ahead. And looking forward to meeting Elizabeth in Goldsboro this summer, which will be fun. If you're coming through North Carolina, please let me know.
I will. Eden, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. God bless you, sir. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. For all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill, wishing you and your family a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, barbecuing, Memorial Day services, spending time with your family. Be well, rest up. We have a lot of work ahead of us. And for such a time as this, put on the full armor of God. I will see you guys next week. Monday will be a repeat episode of Common Sense America, honoring our veterans and talking about our spouses. So I will be back here on Tuesday as we head into the month of June. Until then, have a great weekend, and thank you for joining Common Sense America.
It's time for Common Sense America.